Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome. Last session of the day and for the sittings for this year, which is amazing. I'll just quick preface on this one. I note that while the Administrative Arrangements Order puts responsibility for the Department of the Legislative Assembly with the Chief Minister, by convention, the Speaker administers the department, so will answer questions relating to the department. Madam Speaker, I welcome you and invite you to introduce the officials accompanying you today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for inviting me to come before the committee here today. I'd like to introduce the Clerk of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly, Mr 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍𝙎, and the Chief Financial Officer of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly, Mrs Diem Tang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll invite you to make a brief opening statement. I will then call for questions relating to the statement. The committee will then consider any whole of government, budget and fiscal strategy related questions before moving on to output-specific questions. I'll invite the Shadow Minister to ask their questions first, followed by committee members. Finally, other participating members may ask questions. The committee has agreed that other members may join in on a line of questioning pursued by a Shadow Minister, rather than waiting to the end of the Shadow Minister's line of questioning on an output. Madam Speaker, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
The August 2024 Northern Territory general election generated a huge amount of work for the Department of the Legislative Assembly. There were 12 changes of seats, which involved the handing over of 12 electorate offices. With the change of government, there were also 24 changes of offices in Parliament House. This, of course, was a major exercise, managing the separation of former members and many of their electorate staff, and the onboarding and employment of new members and their new electorate staff. There was a major induction program provided by the DLA to inform members of the fundamentals of Assembly procedure and their electorate entitlements. The DLA organised two big events late last year. The formal opening of the new 15th Northern Territory Assembly was marked on the 15th of October 2024, and the 50th anniversary of the first Northern Territory Legislative Assembly was celebrated in Parliament House on Saturday the 23rd of November 2024. There have been significant changes in the DLA executive leadership team. The former clerk, Mr Matthew Bates, resigned to take up an appointment as the clerk of the Western Australian Legislative Assembly in 2024. The deputy clerk, Mr 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍𝙍, has since been appointed as the clerk of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly. Ms Laurie Zio, who commenced as Executive Director of Parliament Support in July, has since been appointed as the Deputy Clerk. And Ms Carolyn Williams, who's in front of us here, she was appointed to the Executive Director role in April 2025. Parliament House turned 30 last year in 2024. The ageing of Parliament House comes with a growing demand for repairs and maintenance. This is enormously expensive and requires enormous planning and coordination. The job of maintaining Parliament House is shared by the DLA and the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure. These two government departments work in close collaboration. There are three major infrastructure works projects afoot for Parliament House. The first one is the lifts. The 6 lifts within Parliament House need replacing. It is expected that the staged replacement of the lifts will commence in the coming year. The cost of replacing these lifts will be significant. The air conditioning, number 2, the air conditioning on level 5 needs to be replaced. This is, of course, where the ministerial suites are for people listening. This is another major project. The Department of Logistics and Infrastructure is undertaking careful project design to enable the varied elements of this project to be completed with minimum disruption and cost. And thirdly, the Speaker's green drainage system is blocked, causing major water damage, including leakage into level 1 during the wet season. A complete fix is required. Planning for this work is underway. Another big change over the last year was sadly the Northern Territory Library moving out of Parliament House. The NT Library is now located at the new CBD Charles Darwin campus. We are now using the beautiful main Northern Territory Library space on level 2 as a new function and education space. We have temporarily called this space the Atrium until a permanent name is decided. We are exploring with the Minister for Corporate and Digital Development using the the huge lower level of this old library space, level 1, as office accommodation for other NT government agencies and as a training venue. The Legislative Assembly is ensuring that the 25 electorate offices throughout the Northern Territory are safe. There have been increases in security incidents at electorate offices over recent years, both within the Territory and nationally. New safety and security standards are being applied to all electorate offices. The Department of Legislative Assembly has 30 staff plus 13 casual staff employed by Hansard. The DLA enables the effective functioning of the NT Parliament by providing support and professional advice to the 25 members of the Assembly, facilitating meetings of the Assembly, producing parliamentary records and managing and maintaining this magnificent building of Parliament House. These staff do an amazing job and I thank them for their hard work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee about the work of the Department of the Legislative Assembly, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Are there any questions relating to the opening statement? Straight to outputs? Opening? No, sorry. Move straight to outputs. Sorry. Member for Karama.
Can I just check, if I'm going to ask about electorate officers, which output does that come under?
Ask now. I mentioned electorate officers in the opening statement. So
okay, that's fine.
Member for Karama.
Thank you. So we've got 25 electorate officers. You mentioned that there's you had to do a major changeover because of the size of changes and so on. Are you happy? What was the time frame? Is it completed, or what was the time frame? Because we're now 10 months into it.
For what?
For getting everyone installed in the new electorate offices.
Okay. Obviously, this was a major piece of work, and the bit that has taken time is the signage, which is well known to all of us. So we do have some notes on that somewhere, don't we? So just going back, just on the signage, out of the 12 offices, 6 of the offices have their signage in place, and there's still 5 electorate offices.
That was at the end of March.
Oh, that's at the end of March. Karama, Casuarina, Nightcliff, Johnston and Wanguri that didn't have their signs completed. You do now, okay. The reason for that is, like everything in government, it's not straightforward. So a request comes through for signage. It goes back and forth between the Department of DCDD and look, Russell, you've been managing this. It's been an ongoing drama. And so maybe you can explain the process, just to explain why it has taken so long.
Certainly. Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. There's a number of steps in the installation process. First, there's getting the design, which we have a contractor allocated to an office. Then that contractor liaises with the member to develop the sign. That process typically takes 2 to 3 weeks. And then if there's any amendments, it typically takes a week for amendment to be adopted, put in the proof and get a new proof out. On average, there were 5 amendments across all the offices, so that's the average, some more, some less. And also added in there can be the time to consider what amendments might be required. Sometimes members have wanted particular photos they've needed to pursue and that sort of thing. So the initial design, 3 weeks, about a week for each amendment. Then there's a process. We need building over approval, and for that the Department of Legislative Assembly liaises with NT Property Management and gets that approval. That's normally quite prompt, but there's a few layers there, so it's a few days for that. Then a brief is required to be prepared, come through me and to the Speaker, and get the Speaker's approval for the final design. So typically that's another week. Then it can be up to 3 weeks for the contractor to print the sign, and then a week for installation. So if it all goes quite quickly, and it'll be sort of a couple of months. If there's more design issues or other issues along, it can take a little bit longer.
Thank you. And just following up on that, you mentioned NT Property Management. Can you just explain the relationship between the Department of Legislative Assembly and NT Property Management with electorate officers, and how that also interacts with commercial owners of buildings and so on?
Yeah. Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. All the offices are leased, they're not government-owned buildings, and NT Property Management within the Department of Corporate and Digital Development provides leasing services across the government. So they manage the leases, they negotiate the leases, they're the contact with the building owner. And within the Department of Legislative Assembly, our asset and building management team work with NT Property Management to get anything within the offices done. So in offices generally, the infrastructure side of things is managed by the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure, and then NT Property Management for the leasing side of things. So it's a big part of our business in managing the electorate offices of working with those two agencies. And the department has monthly meetings with each of those agencies to discuss leasing and infrastructure issues. And also when it comes to 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍𝙍, sort of Department of Corporate and Digital Development, you know, they also provide ICT services and payroll management services. And so I also meet with sort of regularly with the chief executive of that agency to discuss sort of leasing and other issues. The deputy clerk meets with the deputy chief executive to discuss ICT issues. And I'm also meeting regularly with the deputy chief executive's Department of Logistics and Infrastructure to ensure coordination both on the electorate office infrastructure and also the management of Parliament House.
And if a lease was due to expire, who is responsible for initiating the identification and renewal of a new lease somewhere else? Both the Department of Legislative Assembly and NT Property Management, you know, keep tabs on the leases, and I think it's about 12 months out, but I could be. I don't. The NT Property Management writes to the department to commence the process of decision of if there's an option to renew, whether we do that, whether we want a new lease, or if there's any alternative things to happen. And the asset and building management team discusses with the member, checks the office, looks at any upgrades, sort of painting, any work that might need to be done as part of the renewal process. So the department identifies any changes we might want through that process, and then it gets signed off by the Chief Financial Officer that we have funding available for the lease, and then I sign off on the request for NTPM to renew, get a new lease or other options. Thank you. And my final question is around security of electorate officers. You mentioned in the opening statement you're looking to bring the security levels up across the board. Can you give us an insight as to what those new, what the security levels will look like, and what's the timing for that?
Yeah. Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. The department has worked on some minimum standards for electorate officers. That's been sort of in draft form for a while and is sort of at the stage for final approval. Key element of that is providing physical separation between the officers and and the public. Now, there's two major competing interests in electorate office design. One is accessibility. They exist to be accessible to the public, so we're wanting to maximise accessibility. The competing interest there is to have electorate office staff safe. It's often one staff member in a public-facing position, and a key to the minimum standard there is to maintain, a reasonable level of physical separation. So if there is a problem, the officer has opportunity to, well, firstly, they're safe from any aggressive behaviour, and they have opportunity for dealing with it. And we have a range of, alarms and duress systems and the like in the offices there. I've been going through a process of inspecting all the offices. We're almost finished. We've got one more in Darwin and Nhulunbuy and Elwood. And many of them are quite good. Some of them, the physical separation is not very strong. And we're going through a process of assessing both the risk of individual officers and also how easy fixes are. There are some offices where a bit of screening or a new door will make the office a lot safer, and we're getting that done as quickly as we can. There are others where the layout is more challenging to make it sort of safer according to our current standards, and there'll be work on how to address that.
Similarly, on security again, with the, as an example, I've had the example where the NT Police have requested the video of our CCTV. We obviously have to get permission through the Speaker or Legislative Assembly. Does that process work fairly quickly?
Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. Yes, it does. We have very good relationships with the police. They contact us with video footage. Again, there's competing interests. One is, the member's right to privacy, parliamentary privilege. We treat that with, great importance. We're also really interested in crime prevention and crime control. The police have our contact details. They contact us, and we will, respond appropriately in consultation with the Speaker and the member.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thank you, DLA staff, for all the amazing work that you do all the time, and including for this process. It's greatly appreciated by everyone, I know. I just had a quick follow-up question about security. You said that security incidents had increased in the NT. I wonder if you have any data on that.
I'll do a quick look for the data. Anecdotally, they had, I'd say they probably peaked. COVID seemed to bring out a lot of security incidents around electorate offices, and in the last year or two, there's not been quite as many, I think, but no, actually, I don't have I have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd appreciate that.
Member for Johnston, can you please repeat the question for the record?
Can you provide data on security incidences in electorate offices? And I'm happy for you to determine the appropriate time frame. It can be within the reporting period or more broadly. That would be useful.
Speaker, do you accept the question?
Yes. Yeah.
The question asked by the member for Johnston of the Speaker has been allocated the number 13.1. Are there any further questions?
Yes, thank you,
Member for
Chair.
Johnston.
I was advised by the Chief Minister to ask in this output about entitlements for members. Is that correct?
Look, It is to some extent. Having been an independent member of Parliament for since 2015, this has been an issue that's been ongoing for the independents and crossbenchers. What we saw in the last Parliament, which you may be aware of, in the last year, we were given a research officer specifically for the independent members, and that position effectively ceased at the 30th of June.
It was a bit later, at the end of the last assembly.
End of the last assembly. Now, of course, I wasn't in the job then, but at that point, the clerk made a decision that political decision to give that to make that position exclusively for the independents and crossbenchers had expired, and the clerk who was, were you in the position then at the time, Russell?
No, it was Matt.
It was the former clerk. He decided to open that up because it was a political decision, and he made that research officer available to all members at the start of this assembly. And the person who was employed in that position, I think, was not employed on a permanent basis. So that position changed, yeah. But ironically, the people who are using that position are the independents and the crossbenchers. I think I was informed recently that it's about 80% used by the independents and crossbenchers. So even though it isn't exclusively for the independents and crossbenchers, it's almost exclusively used by them.
Yeah, I would say probably not ironically, given that the independents and crossbenchers have no access to any other support. And, you know, I note that in the budget there's $17.3 million to support ministers and the Leader of the Opposition, which actually includes 21 members of the Legislative Assembly. So there's 4 who get $0.
But it is a political decision, Member for Johnston. It's completely political.
Understood.
It's at the whim of who holds the purse strings, and at the moment, of course, it's the CLP government and Chief Minister. That's the way it is. It's always been that way in my experience.
And I'm happy to pursue it politically. Yeah. My view is that it creates a risk to our democratic processes to not properly resource the very small crossbench to hold the government to account.
It changes.
I just want to pull it back to asking questions.
Sorry, yes, I
in
will.
this section,
I will
rather
pull
than
it back.
Putting out opinions.
Do you have anything to add on that? No.
Just in relation to the services that are provided, we have a library service. Are you able to? I think there used to be a daily news alert service. Are you able to advise? I think that's been discontinued.
I don't remember that. Member for Johnston, do you have any knowledge of that?
Yeah, Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. Yes, there was a daily news alert service in the previous assembly, and we decided to stop that because there was limited staffing and didn't know how much value there was in it given the range of online research tools that there are available. But the service, it is there for the information of members. If there's demand for that, then let us know and we'll respond accordingly.
I would love it. I'm letting you know if I can do that through this process.
You probably have to take that offline and then go
will.
through the Office
Okay.
of Legislative Assembly separately.
Do you have a budget figure for the amount of the acquisitions budget for the Parliamentary Library?
I'd have to take that on notice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Member for Johnston, please restate the question for the record.
Sorry, what's the acquisitions budget for the Parliamentary Library?
Speaker, do you accept the question?
I accept.
The question asked by the Member for Johnston of the Speaker has been allocated the number 13.2. Are there any further questions?
Yeah,
Member for
thank you,
Johnston.
Chair. Also, just you mentioned the plans for the decision made about the old library space. I just wondered if you could talk any more to that, if there's any budget for it, if there's any other considerations about anything else that space may be used for. I think you said it'll be used for education, potentially office space. Is that right?
The decisions we've made around the use of that space are temporary. We didn't want to see that space empty. I think that was my main concern, that this beautiful big space in Parliament House should remain not used. So very quickly, the clerk and I moved to make the library space that people use on level 2 accessible as a venue. So anyone can use that space for anything, like they use all the other venues in Parliament House. We have a venue manual. We have information in the public domain around how people can access all venues in Parliament House. So that's been added to the list of venues. And it is being used. In fact, I just looked out the window just before, down into the beautiful space that we call the atrium now, and it's set up almost as a polling booth. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but maybe people are getting enthusiastic.
I can provide some additional context. I think they're using it as an educational space for students.
Oh, okay. Yes, exactly. It's being used for that purpose, and there's definitely plans afoot to make it a space for educating. The parliamentary education team are using it, and we hope to get some funding to modify one end of it for that as a permanent space to educate children and anyone around the parliamentary system here in the Legislative Assembly. Downstairs, if anyone's ever been there, is even bigger. It's enormous, that level 1, and it's like a dungeon. It doesn't have any windows, and it goes forever. So that's more of a challenge. But again, I said to Russell, let's move on this. We cannot have this empty. I feel very sad personally. The NT Library moved out in the first place. They vacated one beautiful space and have gone to another, but it's left a big gap in the business of Parliament House. And of course, there are limitations on what you can use that for. It can't be turned into a Woolworths, for example. It can't be there for any sort of commercial purpose. It has to fit in with the culture and the work and the business of what we do here. But these are just temporary solutions, and we will continue to work at finding what the permanent use of that will be. It's not easy. There's plenty of space in Darwin at the moment, I think, for government departments to use. I don't think there's a great demand, so we're just leaving it at that at the moment. Member for Johnston.
One little. Thank you. Has there been any thought given to any kind of public engagement or consultation around what that space could be used for?
Look, there has, but we're working on that. Yeah, it's sort of, what can we say? There is some consideration around that, and we're working on what that consultation will look like. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up, Member for Blaine. I wasn't in the Assembly when that decision was made. Do you know who made the decision to move the library out of Parliament House?
No, I don't. Mr. Clerk?
Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. It was part of the cities deal that happened a number of years ago. It was part of that with the creation of the new building for Charles Darwin University. Who actually made that decision, I don't know, but
the cities deal. Look, I just remember being a part of a committee process that has been talking about this for a long time, years. And because the library was such a good fit with what we do here, I think there's been a lot of commiseration around the fact that they've left. And the challenge has been for several years now to try and find a solution to that. So as Speaker, I just wanted it to be used to open it up to the people. Whether it's the best fit now, what we're proposing remains to be seen, but we will continue to seek ideas and there will be a consultation process at some point. Yeah.
Oh, one more question on the opening statement?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is yours a
for
follow-up,
Johnston?
Brian? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Can you tell us what the cost is to the department in overtime payments to staff and equivalent value in time in lieu for senior staff for running the estimates process in its current format, i.e. with at least with extended hours on 3 of the 7 days?
We actually don't have the precise figure for this, but we did discuss that there's a range that it might fall into. I don't know if the clerk wants to share that at the moment because it is imprecise. It's an estimate, a guesstimate. But Mr. Clerk? Yeah.
Yeah, really back of the envelope, it were, half a dozen odd staff and sort of over time, it's going to be sort of 1,000 or 2,000, I would guessing. It's but if you want an accurate figure, we'd need to take it on notice. But in the scheme of things, it's not a significant cost.
1,000 or 2,000 a day. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take it on notice. Yeah.
Member for Johnston, please restate the question for the record.
What's the cost to the department in overtime payments to staff and the equivalent monetary value of time in lieu for senior staff for running the estimates process in its current format?
Speaker, do you accept the
Yes,
question?
I accept.
The question asked by the member for Johnston of the Speaker has been allocated number 13.3. Are there any further questions on the opening
I
statement?
just have an answer to a question that the member for Johnston asked just before. The dollar figure on the acquisitions budget for the library, parliamentary library, is $4,000 per year, or at the moment.
A follow-up, do you know whether that's changed from previous years?
I don't.
I'm pretty sure that's about the same.
Okay, thank you. Just coming back to estimates, has there been any consideration given to conducting estimates in a different format?
Member for Johnston, I've been here for 15 years and it's been the same format throughout that time. It's really up to the Estimates Committee how they operate, and it's up to the Parliament. It's a motion of Parliament how estimates is structured and run. Which ultimately means the government crafts that motion and it's debated on the floor of the Parliament, as you remember. I would remind you that years ago we didn't have estimates at all. So this process, although it might be a bit onerous and clunky and maybe expensive in some people's minds, it does provide a great opportunity for scrutiny. But look, not to my knowledge is the answer to your question.
Yeah, and I don't want us to get rid of estimates.
No.
I think it's wonderful. It's just thinking about how we can do it in a way that's best for staff and the committee. Just one, do you have a follow-up to that? Has there been any costing done on holding Parliament outside Darwin?
Look, this is a question for the government ultimately who funds these things. But of course we haven't, the last sittings of Parliament in Alice Springs was about 2011 or 12. It was a long, long time ago. It is very expensive, but and it is a decision of Cabinet around the funding of it and whether or not it happens. But at the moment there's no funding available for it. It's a big exercise. I do wonder, though, whether it might be cheaper now than what it was 14 years ago because of the way technology is. But anyway, it's a decision of government. It's not my decision. It's certainly not. There's no line in the budget for that. Mr. Clerk, no.
Thank you. And just one one more question, then I'll finish. Just this is in relation to training for MLAs, and you know I very much appreciate having come in as a new MLA, our original training and some ongoing training. I'm just wondering how you identify and address training needs of MLAs. I know it's not something you can enforce, but just wondering what work's being done around that and whether there's a budget for that.
Is there a budget around it?
Not a specific budget.
No. So since the beginning of this parliament, there's been a few training sessions conducted. I mentioned in the opening statement there's been the induction program for new members. There was some training done around estimates. I can't speak on what's happened before because I don't remember clearly, but there hasn't been a lot of training provided to members in the past. So I think we're off on a fairly positive note when it comes to that, the training that we've provided already in the last 10 months.
I'm just going to refer to the member for Arafura.
Can I just add that members through the Remuneration Tribunal are allocated $10,000 in their $10,000 to pay to pursue any professional development that they wish. That is a part of your entitlements. So the onus for people to there is an onus there for members to access the training that they identify for themselves in their own way. And I think a lot of members prefer that, to pursue their own interests and their own training with that $10,000 which is allocated to you.
Sorry, thank you through the chair. Because I've heard this before about how the electorate allowances had those separate. Currently, we just get it as a lump sum. Is there somewhere for us to see that breakdown of that it's $10,000 for training? Like, is it still considered in the breakdown, or we just get it as a lump sum, really?
Look, I'm probably not qualified to answer that. It's a question you could put to the Remuneration Tribunal that meet regularly, that would be more than happy to answer that. But I agree, it's not that clear the way that we're paid these things. I mean, we get an allowance for professional development and training. We get an allowance for our car if we don't have a fleet vehicle. It is all put together, and it's as new members, you wouldn't be particularly clear on how that works, whereas I remember the history of it. It was paid very differently in the past. So now it's all together. Sometimes I forget that there's money there for me to do some training that I might want.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you. Is there any way of us getting more clarity or information on that?
Through the Remuneration Tribunal.
Directly to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's their job.
Right.
Yeah, and as members, you should be contacting them if you have questions. They are there to answer.
Thank you. And just one follow-up to my training question, and then I promise I'll hand on. I'm just wondering whether there's been any consideration given to some of the work that's been done in other parliaments around standards and training for parliamentarians, so like the Set the Standard report, which has made lots of recommendations around ensuring safe workplaces, including for parliamentarians, whether there's been any consideration of any of that report or any others in relation to our parliament.
Sorry, which report are you referring to?
I'm talking about the Set the Standard report in 2021, which was into Commonwealth parliamentary workplaces. So that made a whole series of recommendations. There was another report done in New South Wales recently, particularly around gender within and how that was addressed within Parliament.
Member for Johnston, we don't systematically hear about what other parliaments are doing, and I suppose it's about the work that we choose to do and if we're prompted to do by members. But look, I can't answer that. I'm fairly new to the job, but I think something that we should be looking at. Do you have any comments, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. There's sort of two big parts of what you're raising there. One is, the standards. A lot of it's managed by the Assembly when it comes to members' standards, and there's a range of issues there that would be matters for the Assembly rather than the department to look at. When it comes to staff, we have responsibility in relation to, electorate office staff. We're working on some material to help with the work health and safety of electorate officers, and that's been part of the discussion of visiting the different offices and to help members, in the management of their offices. So those reports are something that the department does look at, and we're following up on in relation to our role with electorate office staff. But the wider issues around how the Assembly works is a matter for the Assembly.
A lot of parliaments use their committee systems to look at these issues, select committees and specific committees to look at codes of conduct and standards. What the clerk is saying is true. It's stuff that we could try and initiate through, our office and our interests. But if that's something that the Assembly wishes to pursue, then it's usually done through the committee system. The committee system can be as big or as small as you want, and the work that is undertaken by committees is critical to all aspects of our democracy, not just sort of internally or introspectively like, what happens to us as members, but for all parts of society. So, I sometimes think that we are the smallest jurisdiction in Australia, but we could be doing a lot more work to thrash out those sort of issues. The smaller you are, though, the less you do because of capacity. It's a simple case of, you were drawing our attention to the cost of estimates. The cost of having more committees is also a burden on the taxpayer. So there's a lot we could be doing, Member for Johnston, but there are constraints.
Member for Arafura.
Yeah.
To the committee, can you provide a breakdown of the funding allocated to parliamentary committees for the reporting period?
Yeah, we'll take that one on notice.
Member for Arafura, can you please repeat the question for the record?
Can you, Madam Speaker, can you provide a breakdown of the funding allocated to parliamentary committees for the reporting period?
Madam Speaker, do you accept the question?
Yes, I accept that.
The question asked by the member for Arafura of the Speaker has been allocated the number 13.4. Do you have further questions, member for Arafura?
Yes,
What I can say is that it has increased in this parliament. That is fair to say, hasn't it? The demand for the work of committees and the demand for support from the Legislative Assembly in running committees has increased substantially, but I haven't got a figure for that. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's in line with my next question. The allocated budget for the 25-26 is roughly 4.7 million compared to 4.5 in 24-25. Can you explain what the increase in the Assembly Services budget relates to?
Mr. Clark?
We're just seeking. So you're talking about the Assembly Services budget line.
Yes.
We take on notice to be correct.
1.1.
Yeah, it's safest to take it on notice, but it's just safer to take it on notice. But yeah.
Member for Arafura, please repeat the question for the record.
Thank you. Through the chair. The allocated budget for the 25-26 is roughly 4.7 compared to a million compared to 4.5 million in 24-25. Can you explain what the increase in the Assembly Services budget relates to?
Madam Speaker, do you accept the question?
Yes, I do.
The question asked by the member for Arafura of the Speaker has been allocated the number 13.5. Member for Arafura.
Speaker, is the Assembly exploring options Parliament House should be made an alcohol-free workplace? and
that's an
for
interesting
alcohol-free
question.
for events.
People might remember that I ran a motion in Parliament to that effect a few years ago. But that's once again, that's a decision of the Assembly. And at the time I put that through, which was probably about 2 years ago, that was rejected by the Assembly. So any member can put that same motion or something similar up, and it can be debated like everything else. But I don't have the power to implement an alcohol-free workplace in Parliament House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through the chair, the member for Phong Lim said that the CLP should have the Legislative Scrutiny Committee as a de facto standard to address every piece of legislation. Is there sufficient funding allocated in the budget for this to happen, or would the department staff struggle to do this?
There isn't sufficient funding to have a bigger scrutiny committee process. The answer is no.
No. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is there any further funding allocated for portraits of past speakers? And if so, how much? I think speakers Purick, Paik, Young, Arquette and Monaghan are the ones that are due.
Yes, there is money, funds available. There is a procurement process that has to be followed. So any former speaker is entitled to have a portrait painted of themselves to be hung in Parliament House, and there is money allocated for that. The former speaker identifies an artist that they might like to use to paint their picture, and that name is then forwarded back to the Legislative Assembly, who undertakes a procurement process to have that work done.
Yep. Similar question. The next one, is there any funding allocated for portraits of past chief ministers, and if so, how much?
It's exactly the same. The amount is...
There was an amount set by the House Committee of it's about $9,000.
Yeah, it's about... I think it's 8,800. I think the 800 is the GST component. So $8,800. But, you know, some artists might do it for less.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Or more.
Is the anti-government executive paying rooms fees for use of political party events or their government hosted events? If not, why not?
Are you talking about ministers?
Anti-government executive paying room fees for use of political party events or other hosted events?
Member for Arafura, any political party events are separate from government, or they should be. The events that ministers hold here in Parliament House are not political party events, and they are not. They don't pay for the use of the venue. I mean, that's why one of the reasons Parliament House is here, to celebrate Duke of Edinburgh Awards or Red Cross Awards or whatever it is. And the various, as you would know, the various ministers tend to host those events that are in line with their portfolios. That's always been the case under Labor and the CLP. But if anyone was to host a political party event in Parliament House, they would have to pay. And I'm not aware of any. Well, if there have been political party events held in Parliament House, then they should have paid, whether it's Labor or the CLP or any other party.
Just got a follow-up question here for the member for Kurrama.
Yeah, just going on to the events. Do the events in Parliament House have to be approved by the Speaker?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Given you have oversight of the Parliament.
Yes. Look, that's one of the clear roles that I do have as Speaker, is that I provide approval for people using Parliament House. But having said that, I don't. I delegate probably, to delegate would be the right word to other members or executive staff of the Legislative Assembly. But I have oversight of all that.
And just once again on the events themselves, there are different events. There were certain commemoration events that was whole of assembly events. There's let's say the multicultural events that are hosted. Who pays for those different events? Is it coming out of the Legislative Assembly budget? Is it coming out of ministerial budgets, or does it depend on the actual event itself?
Well, the only events that the Legislative Assembly pays for are, strictly speaking, those that are organised by the Legislative Assembly. For example, the ones that I cited in my opening statement, the 50th anniversary of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly, the opening of Parliament. We don't do much beyond that in terms of events. So all the other events, and there are many, there's a busy lineup of events every week in Parliament House. It's fully utilised, and that's great. That's exactly what it should be used for. Those events are paid by either the private people or organisations that have booked a venue in Parliament House to use for their event. Some of them are paid by protocol. There are protocol events that are organised basically for the government, on behalf of the government. So there's a combination of events and who pays and who organises. But the Legislative Assembly has very few events, really, and we have a very limited budget.
And just going back to your oversight of the whole thing, does the Speaker also have to approve if people want to have protests or whatever as part of democracy outside? Those things have to come through?
No, they don't. So the wonderful thing about democracies is that you can front up to your Parliament House anywhere in the world, pretty much, from my understanding, and protest. A lot of groups will pay the courtesy of telling us that they're going to have a protest, which is good for security. We can prepare. It's good for them. It's good for us. But no, they don't have to seek permission at all. It was interesting. Years ago, I went to the Scottish Parliament, and there were people everywhere. There were multiple protests going on outside the Scottish Parliament. It was amazing. And I attended Parliament and spoke to different members of the Scottish Parliament, and they said that that's just a normal, everyday thing in the Scottish Parliament. And I've grown to realise that that is the case, and that's good.
So
I think it's great.
The reason I asked that is I do recall when they had the first crime rally outside of them, they openly got up and said, we have the approval of the Speaker of the Parliament, which I think was Mr Monaghan at the time. But
technically, they didn't need the approval,
right, so
but they might have notified the Speaker, which
So
is
it
good.
would have
That's
been a
that's a courtesy thing to do. But if you wanted to go down the front of the Parliament House this afternoon, member for Karama, and have your own little protest, you don't have to tell me, but it'd be nice if you did. Is there? Oh, well, there is a formal notification process, but it's not mandatory, is it? No, it's just a courtesy thing, yeah.
thank you.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you so much. Just to back to members' entitlements, so the 1.4 FTE that we get, so that's decided by the Remuneration Tribunal, is that right? But you're saying that's a political decision. So does the government...
No, not
No, sorry.
the staffing allocation.
Well, that's what I'm asking for clarification on.
No, it technically is, because the Remuneration Tribunal, and I'm not really equipped to be talking about this, but I will say that they do an annual review and they make recommendations, and then they will provide that report to the government, and I think it's the Chief Minister who tables that report, and it can be debated. It is it's there to be debated in Parliament, and then the Parliament accepts that report. So ultimately, it is the Parliament, the Assembly, that decides whether or not to accept the recommendations of the Remuneration Tribunal.
Thank you. Because, yeah, the reason I'm asking, I guess, is that crossbench members get the same as backbenchers of the government. We'll get a 1.4. Backbenchers can come in here of the government, don't have to do anything in Parliament. They come in with their pre-written Dorothy Dixes and whatever. We have to be there to read all the bills, put stuff forward. We have our, our general business day.
Just get you to go through to a question.
I am getting to my question. I knew you'd try and cut me off. So does the DLA recognise that a lack of parliamentary staff for crossbench members reduces our capacity to engage effectively in parliamentary duties?
The DLA isn't here to preside over those questions. I think I have my own personal view. I'm sure Russell and Diem have their views too. That's not our job. Our job is to run Parliament House and ensure we've got a democratic process happening within our jurisdiction and Parliament House is looked after. Those decisions are made by the Assembly. It's challenging. I understand what you're saying, but that's not my job as Speaker.
Sure, got it. Thank you. Oh, look, I think Manuel, sorry, member for Arafura, did you have another one? I cut you off. Oh, that's all right. I mean, if I can't ask them here, it's just frustrating because we asked these questions to the Chief Minister. She tried to handball to this department when really these are questions.
Sorry, Member for Nightcliff, can we just ask questions rather than trying to throw people under the bus? Thank you.
The Chief Minister was, I think, referring to the fact that there was an independent research officer in the last Parliament that was funded. The funding's still there, but it's been changed. I think that could be the only thing she's referring to from my perspective. And we've answered that question. It was funded internally. Oh, sorry. Well, it was funded internally, but politically it was labelled a position specifically for the independents. So that Parliament's finished.
Sure. And do we actually have an update on the job application for the new researcher? Oh, they have started.
Yeah, they started.
Oh, sorry. Yep, that was the same position that was advertised. Gotcha. Thank you.
So there are two research officer positions that all members can access.
Are there any further questions?
One question.
Member for Blaine?
Are we fully staffed now in the committees area?
Mr. Clark?
Russell Keith, Clerk and Chief Executive Officer. We've created a 12-month supernumerary senior research officer, which is being advertised right now to help get us through because there's a lot of demand right now. But otherwise, I think all the positions in the committee office are full.
Awesome, thank you.
So to clarify, sorry, that's a 12-month.
I just get you to direct your questions through the chair.
Sorry,
rather
through
than
the,
just
through the
jumping in.
chair. That's a 12-month position. Is that the one that's currently started or it's being advertised?
Been advertised.
Okay, thank you.
One last question.
Member for Arafura.
Let me just find it. Thank you. Through the chair. The Australian Christian Lobby hosted an event in Parliament House earlier this year. Can you confirm who paid for the room hire for this event?
I know that. I'm aware of this. I had a journalist ring me up and ask me about this. The Australian Christian Lobby booked a room through the Legislative Assembly booking system, like anyone can, and they paid for that room, to use that room like anyone can, and there's really nothing more to say about that.
Thank you.
15 seconds, no further questions? Okay. Okay, so that concludes consideration of outputs relating to the Department of Legislative Assembly. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank Madam Speaker, for appearing before the committee today. I also thank the departmental officers who provided advice. Do you have any closing statements?
I'd like to thank the staff of the Legislative Assembly for doing such a spectacular job. I'd like to congratulate you all for the estimates process. You've done well. It's been entertaining. I've been watching you from afar. Relevancy deprivation on my behalf. Good luck and thank you very much.
I'd probably just throw out a really big thank you to the Department of Legislative Assembly. You provide us with an immense amount of support and we very much appreciate everything that you do. So I'll just give my closing statement now. That concludes the committee's public hearings on estimates of proposed expenditure contained in the Appropriation Bill 2526, the Revenue Legislation Amendment Bill 2025, and statements of corporate intent for Power and Water Corporation, 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍𝙍 Energy and Territory Generation. I remind officers that all answers to questions taken on notice must be given to the Estimates Committee by Monday the 14th of July 2025. On behalf of the committee, I again extend my thanks to the ministers, board chairs and officials that appeared before the committee. I also take this opportunity to place on the public record my appreciation of the assistance and support provided by agency staff. I also thank members of this committee and other members who participated in the hearings and for the work they've put in and the overall manner in which these public hearings have been conducted. I'd like to thank the chair sitting behind you, Mr. Clinton Howe, for all of his work during this period, and shared the role with both myself and I think Mr. O'Gallagher here stepped in as well. And I now formally close public hearings of the Estimates Committee. Thank you.